Okay. Hello and namaste. Good evening to my respected tutor and my dear MPL school friends. My name is Suresh Adhikari, and now I'm going to present my presentation about reflecting translation theory and practice. It's a kind of visual presentation. Uh, okay. I divided my presentation into six subtopics. The first subtopics is about the perception change of translation after taking the course, or what I used to think about translation before taking the course of translation. I want to give such claims, uh, fixer what I could not understand before I started, let's say, MPhil second semester about 2 months ago. Then I little bit focus on what I know about translation after taking the course and its theoretical tools. During the course of learning, we teach some workshop in our virtual regular classes. Obviously, there are so many challenges that I face during my learning periods. What kind of technical challenges I face in that workshop? Let me share some my experiences and reflection in this presentation. I still remember those days when I started my MPhil second semester about 2 months ago. I simply thought translation is just an act of communication. But after taking the course of translation, I come to know doing translation is more important rather than auto translation. As I know, he or she needs to have the linguistic and extra linguistic foundation as the translator. Every translator has their own resource, sources, let's say experiences, most of experiences and methods. It means every translator is different. In any case, although it has their own style and rhythm and follows their own patterns and process. Every translator always goes from the phase of understanding the text to expressing the text. Uh, it means, in other words, the translator reads a text, he or she has to analyze it and understand it, and then translate the different units of meaning into other units of meaning in the target language. Well, we were doing to Nepali text, for example, Ek Sundar Beshyaviti, Beshyaprati, which is written by Lakshmi Prasad Dekota, and Chapamar Yuvatiku Diary by Tara Rai. I know as a translator has a double role. Um, on the one hand, he or she needs to be loyal the intention of the author, structure, and author's culture, and also the word choices. And on the other hand, we need and he or she needs to loyal to the target audience. In that case, we have to preserve the style of source text. Um, Mm, okay, and in that case, we have to preserve the style of source text, not only translate the word to word. So while translating the source language into target language, we have to consider about equivalent words or phrases like idiomatic phrases, syntactic structure, sentence, there is roster, and so on, which I don't know before taking the course of translation stories. So um, uh, as we know, the term translation is an art, or let's say craft, principle, or philosophy. If we go to the deeply, translation has mainly two definitions. One is translation means the act or an instance of translating, and another is it is a written or spoken expression of the meaning of a word, speech, book, etc. in another language. Okay, well, analyzing these two definition. The first, these two senses relates to translation as a process, and the second is to the product. The first sense focus on the role of the translator in taking the original, or okay, let's say source text, and turning it into a text in another language, which is called the target text. And the second sense centers center on the concrete translation product produced by the translator. Okay, so the translator aims to transfer the text from the source language to the target language, so that both the meaning and the written style remain unchanged. So taking into account the differences between languages, it is often difficult to preserve both of the style of the text. So the translator is thus forced to make a decision that very according to the nature of the text and the aim. Okay, and the aims of the okay. So the translator is thus forced to make decision that vary according to the nature of the text and the aims of the translation. In general, as shown the diagram, we can distinguish the different types of typology in translation. Okay. As we analyze this diagram, there are many interdisciplinary texts or approaches while we are going to translate. Like there is philosophy, linguistic texts, or literary stories, cultural studies, and language engineering. In philosophical translation, there is we have hermeneutics, post-structuralism, and deconstructive texts. In linguistic, there are many semantics, pragmatic, social linguistic, and we have contrastive linguistic, corpus linguistic, cognitive linguistic, text and discourse analysis. And in literary text, there are many genres like poetic, rhetoric, literary criticism, narratology, critical discourse analysis, comparative, and literature. In cultural stories, film stories, language, power, idea, ideologies, gender stories, gay stories, history posturalism are included in cultural stories. And there is technical or language engineering, machine translation, corpus terminology, and lexicology, or multimedia are in language engineering. So while we analyzing this diagram, there are mainly four or fifth interdisciplinary translation or typology in translation. Okay, the first translation is called informative translation. Informative translation means the translation of text of an informative nature, such as journalism and the news. Journalism and such type of journalism and news are included in informative translation. And there is also the literary translation. Literary translation means the translation of literary texts such as prose, poetry, fiction, drama. It is such kind of genres are included in literary translation. And we have another scientific translation. In scientific translation, the translation of health and scientific texts are included in scientific translation. And we have also the technical translation. Technical translation means the translation of text of a technical nature, such as those related to engineering, automotives, or computing. And we have also another translation, legal translation. Legal translation means the translation of text in the legal field. This is different from sworn SWR and sworn translation. As we know, sworn translation means the official translation of documents, certificates, etc. that require legal validity. And this type of translation can only be done by accredited translators. So we have also the financial or economic translation. The translation of text about finance are included in financial translation. So therefore, it is essential to understand what type of translation we are dealing with. This is the must requirements, or this is the must skill or knowledge when the translator is doing his translation. Okay, in the name and nature of translation story, originally presented in 1972 by James Holmes, the objective of translation are twofold. According to James Holmes, the objective of translation are twofold. The one false is to describe the phenomena of translating and translation or translations as they manifest themselves in the world of our experiences, and the second fold is to establish general principles by means of which these phenomena can be explained and predicted. So Holmes' paper refers to many key aspects of translation. It talks of translation as a process. A process means what happens in the act of translation, the source text. And then the second key aspect is about a product. Product means a kind of analysis of target text. And the third one is a function. Function means how the target text operates in a particular context. And another linguist, we have Roman Jakobson. He, in his seminal paper on linguistic aspect of translation, he makes a very important distinction between three types of written translation. The first translation is about is a lingual translation. It means a translation within the same language which can involve rewording or paraphrase. The second translation is about the interlingual translation. Interlingual translation means a kind of translation from one language to another, and the third one is intersemitic translation. Intersemitic translation means the translation of the verbal sign by non-verbal sign. For example, music and images are such type of intersemitic translation. And in order to explain the linguistic meaning and equivalence, Jakobson brought the concept of Saussurean theory of language. According to Saussure, the sign is made up of signifier and signifier. There are chain of signifiers which are arbitrariness, but there is only one signified. But here, on the perspective of linguistic, Jakobson says that there are multiple chain of signifiers, but there is no signified. For example, the word cheese means to understand a kind of food of praise course, but in Russian it denotes cottage cheese or bring cheese, and but the concept of cheese is only one. So in translation, there are different in meaning, form, register, and we have to be aware about this text while we are translating the text. Okay, while taking the course of translation studies, we translate many interdisciplinary Nepali texts into English, like literary translation, economic translation, and legal translation. It is clear that technical manual will leave less room for the translator's personal interpretation than a literary text. Then the art of translation includes not just language, but also a wide range of cultural and intellectual aspects that form part of the daily life of the people who speak that language and have it as their mother tongue. So we got many advantages from this kind of collaborative learning. While translating this text, we know about the translator has to transform not just the lexical and syntactic aspect. In fact, a group of words, even well constructed at the syntactic level, is not enough. It is hard to understand and lacks that something that all good translators have to confirm on the text. So it could be said that translation means, as you know, saying almost the same thing. All this is designed to achieve well-defined objectives. Okay, let's say almost the same thing, so that the reader understands, first of all, in the clearest and most effective way possible what the original text aimed to express. So the reader does not know the original version and does not have to know it, but it is important that they understand the text that they have in front of them. So जस्तो हामीले लिगल टेक्स्टको बारेमा चाहिँ ट्रान्सलेसन गर्नु पर्यो भने अब we have no skill about the terminology of legal translation. So, if we translate the legal text, we have to understand the whole text, which this kind of text is in front of us. So, the objective is effective communication. So, the learning, the theoretical tools, workshop, and peer translation make us be confident and encourage in today's translation trends. I like so. So there are many challenges, as you know, of being a translator while translating the source text into target language. There are many challenges which I faced during my workshop or during my study, the course of translation study. The first challenge is interpreting the meaning of the source text. Interpreting meaning can have very different result, as you know, since one meaning can have several interpretations. Such kind of such kind of literary text, while we are interpreting the literary text, there are many meanings which we had to interpret the text. So this makes us reflect on how we can translate something exactly from one language to another. So given that one sentence or a few words can be interpreted in different ways, how should the translator interpret the meaning of such kind of literary text? This is the genuine or most challenges issue in literary text while we are translating the literary text. So in many ways, certainly, but which is the correct one? Because there are multiple interpretation in the literary text. So obviously, the literary translation still becomes such a debating among several experts and researchers, especially a translation studies. So there are chain of signifiers which I elaborate above in details. There are words in other languages that do not have an univocal equivalent in our own, and a whole sentence is needed to translate them. So sometimes. Simple sentence can be used, but sometimes they are too complicated and introduce fairly subjective feelings. So language is, in fact, a reflection of how people in a different culture understand the world around them. So the author of non-literary text is driven by the desire to communicate something, and the development of their work is always conditioned by linguistic rules, which lead them, let's say, to try to follow more or less strictly what is normally considered correct. So the literary author, on the other hand, has the same communicative among with this kind of non-literal text, but tries to achieve it in a totally different way. It is easy to imagine the different effects that these choices can have on the final translation. So I come to conclude that personally, I prefer when I have to translate the text, there are mainly two stages. The first stage is analytical, it's analytical perspective, and the second is the research stage. First, I highlight the terms sentences and expression and read the whole text, which help to understand the understanding background of the text. Then I began to research the term, particularly if it is something unfamiliar or technical, because there are many technical translation text like engineering or sort of certain jargon would like literary or economical translation text. So I use different tools that can be found online, such as glossaries, articles, similar text, previous translation, anything that can give me a clear idea of how to go about the translation. So then I start the first draft of the new text, that is analyze the form of original text and prioritize the accuracy of the message to the detriment of style. So it is essential to have the ability or skill to see which part of the message could be understood and which tools could be used to compensate for this residue. Uh, okay, thank you very much. Well, this is my personal perception, what I gained after taking the course of translation. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.